Morning you guys, it's Karen, and I thought I would come and talk about beauty blenders or makeup sponges and the ones that I've tried and what I think about them and some little experiments I've done with them. So I've got here the Real Techniques sponge, which is the one I've used the most over the years, I think. I used that for quite some time, and then I tried the Beauty Blender and preferred that and have kind of used that ever since, occasionally using the Real Techniques where this one's, you know, being cleaned or whatever. And then more recently I thought, you know what, I need to buy more sponges. Like, I use them so much, I need to have a lot more. Like, I've probably got, or I had about 3 of the Beauty Blenders and probably about 6 of the Real Techniques ones, but the Beauty Blenders had kind of, I'd washed them in the washing machine and all the colours have got a bit wonky, so I was like, I need to buy some more. But I do not want to buy 6 Beauty Blenders because they are £17. So I had a look at all the other ones and thought I'll try some cheaper ones. So we've got the Beauty Blender, the original Beauty Blender, then the Real Techniques normal original sponge. I've got the Real Techniques Air sponge, Miracle Air I think it's called, and then this one is the Aesthetica sponge Beauty Blender, and I do have a dupe even for this one that is cheaper still and exactly the same. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. The first test I did with the sponges is to find out how quickly foundation absorbed when they were damp, because that's mostly how we use them. I did also test it dry, but damp was what I was mostly interested in, because I always felt like if my foundation is going to disappear, then, you know, and absorb into the sponge, then I'm wasting foundation. And it does particularly do that. I can see that it does that with this air sponge, because this is very, very flimsy feeling compared to the others. I would say this one is the flimsiest. Then next is probably the Beauty Blender. The Real Techniques feels a little bit firmer, and then this one is very, very firm. Like, you don't feel like you can squish it right the way down, you know. So I put them in a little tray and dropped a bit of liquid foundation on each of them, and the first one for it to disappear, it's actually that little spot you can see there, you know, so I could see when it had sunk in. And the first one was the Beauty Blender. Yeah, this absorbed the quickest. Then it was the Real Techniques original, then it was the Real Techniques Air, Miracle Air, and then the Aesthetica was the one that it sunk into the last. I'm not surprised actually, because like I said, that this doesn't expand very much, you know. It's a little bit bigger than the Beauty Blender, but when you wet the Beauty Blender, the Beauty Blender is a lot bigger, and this one doesn't really change in size at all. It's a lot firmer. So you would think, okay, well that means that if I'm using the Aesthetica one, it won't waste as much product because it's not sunk in. But it wasn't quite that simple. What I then tested was I used each sponge on my hand in a different area to see, well, how much product could I get out? And there was still, you know, a lot of product on each of them. The lightest out of them, you know, the one that looked the sheerest was the Beauty Blender. So the Beauty Blender did come out as absorbing the most and giving back the least, if you see what I mean. Putting it on my hand, there was the most was staying inside the sponge. But I got a really good coverage with both of the Real Techniques ones. The Aesthetica one gave a bit of a lighter coverage as well. You know, there wasn't as much coming out of the sponge when I was putting it on my hand. The other thing I tested was how long it took them to dry, because I always felt like I got more time out of my Real Techniques sponge, which for me is good. See, there'll be little things that are, you know, each of us want from a makeup sponge. And for me, obviously I didn't want it to be damp for too long, because then it will be a moist environment and more prone to getting bacteria. But the Beauty Blender I always felt dried out too quickly, because it's a pain for me to keep going backwards and forwards to the bathroom dampening it every morning. So I tested that out, and the one to dry the quickest was the Miracle Air sponge. No surprise, because like I said, it's really flimsy. Then the Beauty Blender dried quicker again. The Real Techniques took a couple of hours more than this one, so it's not that much. And then this one, honestly, this still feels a little bit damp, and I did the test at 2:20 yesterday, so it's nearly 24 hours that I did the test, and this one still, if I squeeze it, I can feel a little bit of dampness. So this one would hold the water for the longest. Let me give you a summary that might help you choose which one you would prefer. So if you are looking for one that stays damp for longer, then the Aesthetica one or the Beakey ones that I'm going to show you that are a lot cheaper again would be the best one. If you're looking for the absolute cheapest, the Beakey ones are the same, and like I said, I have tested them as well. They look exactly the same as this Aesthetica one. They're as firm, they take the same amount of time for the liquid to absorb, etc, etc. If you're looking for, I suppose, the most hygienic, as in it dries out the quickest, then that's the Beauty Blender, because it's a little bit lighter than any of the others. You know, it's a little bit more airy. If you specifically like the sharp end as opposed to the perfectly cylindrical ones, then you'll prefer the Real Techniques ones, because they do have that edge, and some people use that edge. I don't use it. I don't mind whether it has that or not, really. So the Real Techniques are better for you if you want that. And actually, this Real Techniques Miracle one is one that you can really squeeze, and you could probably, you know, use around your eyes, and it's probably a bit more multitasking. The one that's the most robust, I would say the Aesthetica one is going to be robust, but I have not yet. I put it in one wash and washed the Beakey one just to make sure that it stayed intact, and it did, but obviously it's not been through lots of washes. But I have done lots of washes with the Beauty Blenders and the Real Techniques original one. The Real Techniques has lasted really well through washing. The Beauty Blender hasn't. So I would say that the most robust is probably the Aesthetica / Beakey ones, but the Real Techniques original one is pretty robust as well. The least robust would be this Air one, because like I said, it's already got a split in it, and I haven't even done anything except used it a little bit. I haven't washed it at all. If you're looking for a light cover, so you prefer a sheerer coverage when you're putting on whatever foundation you're using, the Aesthetica gave the lightest coverage. I think because, you know, like I'm saying, I can still feel water coming from it, so it holds more inside and it doesn't come through as quickly. So it will absorb the product and stay in there, and it will take a little bit more. You'll have to use a little bit more product to get a fuller coverage. So the Aesthetica will give you a lighter coverage if that's what you prefer. And the Beauty Blender is fairly light, but the Real Techniques give a kind of heavier coverage, I would say. Like, you get more product immediately. I would say for cleaning, they're all probably similar. I haven't tried to clean this Miracle sponge, but like I said, I did wash the Beakey one. I washed it by hand to see how it went, and then I put it in the washing machine. And is that a little split? No, it's not. And it was absolutely fine. You know, they're all much of a muchness, I would say, equally easy enough to clean. I mean, they never come up perfectly, but they do all clean about the same. So the cheapest of all of them is, of course, the Aesthetica ones. But which one did I decide that I was going to go for in the end? Well, I was pleasantly surprised by this Real Techniques Miracle Air when it's dry. Using it dry, I thought that it wouldn't have a good effect, but it does. It actually works pretty well dry. And so I really like that. However, the fact that it's now got a split in it is kind of making me think that it's a bit of a waste of money, because if it's going to fall apart, God, what a fright. That's just my tumble dryer occasionally just comes on just for a second. I don't know whether it's to remind you that it's going, you know. Anyway, yeah, if it's just going to fall apart after I literally like have had this about a week, that's kind of pointless. But I do still prefer the Beauty Blender. The Beauty Blender is my #1 choice in terms of if money was no object, the Beauty Blender is where I would just buy a big pile of Beauty Blenders. But they're so expensive that I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to buy a whole bunch of those. I do like the Real Techniques one. It's a little bit firmer than the Beauty Blender. It's a little bit bigger. And so actually, is it bigger? Let me go and wet them and show you what they're like wet. Okay, so that's the Beauty Blender and the Real Technique. So this one is a little bit bigger, and I think that's why I prefer this. I like it a little bit smaller. You can see, as I said, the Aesthetica one doesn't really change. I have wet that one, but it doesn't change really very much at all. And then that's the Real Techniques Miracle Air. It doesn't change in size that much either, I think, again, because it just doesn't hold much water at all. So the Beauty Blender is my favourite out of all of them. But what I have done is I've treated myself to our new Beauty Blender. So I've bought one, I've bought the pink one, and I'm going to buy a multi-pack of these. So I think certainly you can get 2 in a pack for $7.99, but I think you can maybe get a 4-pack, and that's what I'm going to do, so that I'll mostly be using these, if you know what I mean. I don't like this one. I feel like it's too firm and it doesn't, to me, blend as well. So if you're looking for, you know, the one that blends as well, I do think the original Real Techniques and the Beauty Blender both blend really, really well. To me, this just has the tiniest little edge. But this one, to me, doesn't blend as well at all. It is a bit... Maybe it's just a knack. It just doesn't feel as natural in my hands. It feels heavier. It feels like I'm sort of having to go over areas a lot more, and it doesn't feel as seamless for some reason, but it is definitely the best value for money. I feel like this video was a little bit disordered, but hopefully you gained something from it. You can see, you know, a few of the beauty blenders and how they work and what prices they are and what the kind of pluses and minuses are. Let me know what your favourite one is. I'm sure there's others out there that are good, but when you look up dupe, you know, I have researched to see if there's any other dupes recommended for the Beauty Blender. The one that comes up the most is the Aesthetica one. And to me, it is not a dupe for the Beauty Blender at all. I would say the Real Techniques is more of a dupe. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you very much for watching today, and I'll speak to you again soon.